People say life has a cruel sense of humor. It gives you everything you ever wanted, only to take it away when you need it most. And sometimes, it brings people together in the most unexpected way. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, what city are you watching from? And don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10 at the end. Now, let's begin. It was a quiet evening in Manhattan, the kind of evening where the streets shimmered under golden lights and the city's heartbeat slowed just enough for people to catch their breath. Inside the Grand Pearl, one of the city's most luxurious restaurants, a young waitress named Emily Carter adjusted her apron and checked the clock. 9:45 p.m. One more table, she told herself. Just one more. Her shoes pinched her feet, her back ached, and the faint smell of roasted truffle butter clung to her hair. But none of it mattered. Emily needed every tip she could get. Rent was due. Her younger brother's tuition fee was pending. Life had given her no choice but to keep pushing. At that same moment, across the city, a black Bentley slowed in front of the restaurant. The valet rushed forward, opening the door with both hands. From the car stepped Alexander Blackwood, a name that turned heads in every boardroom from New York to London. Billionaire investor, founder of Blackwood Industries, ruthless in business, mysterious in life. He was a man people whispered about but never truly knew. And tonight, for reasons even his assistant didn't understand, he had chosen to dine here alone. Inside, as Emily wiped down the counter, her manager hurried toward her. "Emily," he said, straightening his tie. "Table 12. VIP guest. Treat him like royalty." "Understood?" Emily nodded, her tired smile automatic. "Of course, Mr. Bennett." When she walked over to table 12, she saw him, tall, impeccably dressed, silver streaks in his dark hair, a face that carried both authority and exhaustion. For a moment, something strange flickered in her chest. He looked familiar, but she shook off the thought. "Just another rich man," she told herself. "Good evening, sir," she greeted softly. "Welcome to the Grand Pearl. Can I get you something to start?" He looked up slowly, his cold gray eyes meeting hers, eyes that seemed to hold decades of regret and distance. For a heartbeat, Alexander froze. There was something about her face, the shape of her eyes, the quiet strength in her expression. It stirred something deep, something buried under years of guilt. But he quickly masked it with his usual composure. "Just water for now," he replied. His voice was calm, commanding, the kind that made people listen. Emily nodded, pouring the water carefully. As she set the glass down, her hand trembled slightly, and a drop spilled onto the tablecloth. "I'm so sorry," she began. But instead of anger, Alexander simply said, "It's fine." His tone surprised her. Not harsh, not impatient, just tired. She smiled faintly. "Thank you, sir. I'll be right back with your order." As she walked away, Alexander found himself watching her. There was a grace in her simplicity, the way she moved, spoke, even smiled despite her exhaustion. He couldn't explain why, but she reminded him of someone he once loved more than anything in the world. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Emily leaned against the wall for a second, catching her breath. Her coworker Jenna nudged her. "Lucky you, that's Alexander Blackwood." "The billionaire," Emily frowned. "The one from the news? The tech company guy?" "Yep, he practically owns half of New York," Jenna smirked. "If you play it right, maybe he'll tip like he owns the other half too." Emily chuckled softly, though her mind was elsewhere. Billionaires didn't impress her anymore. Her father had once been one too, or so she'd been told. But he'd disappeared before she was even born, leaving her mother to fight cancer and bills alone. She shook her head, dismissing the thought. The past didn't matter. Back at table 12, Alexander sat in silence, stirring his drink. Across from him, the empty chair felt heavier than usual. He had once promised someone he'd never dine alone again. Someone who'd begged him to stay when all he'd cared about was business. Her voice still haunted him. "Don't let success turn you into a stranger, Alex." But that was a lifetime ago. A lifetime and a daughter ago. Emily returned with the food. Grilled salmon, lemon risotto, and sautéed greens. She placed each dish gently before him. "Would you like anything else, sir?" Alexander looked up again, studying her face in the warm light. Her eyes, blue, bright, determined. His chest tightened. "They looked just like Claire's, sir?" Emily asked, noticing his distant stare. He blinked, regaining composure. "No, thank you. That'll be all," she smiled politely, stepping away. But not before he caught sight of the small silver locket around her neck. It glinted faintly when she moved. He didn't know why, but something about it felt painfully familiar. A few minutes later, while cleaning another table, Emily overheard two businessmen whispering near the bar. "That's Alexander Blackwood, isn't it?" One said. "Yeah. Heard his daughter died years ago." Tragic story. "Guess money can't fix everything." Emily froze mid-step. "His daughter died?" she thought. "I didn't even know he had one." Across the room, Alexander signed the check, his pen pausing for just a second. He wrote a number that made the waiter's eyes widen. $1,000 tip, but before leaving. He turned slightly, his voice low. "Tell the young lady who served me, thank you." Emily watched him go, the Bentley's headlights vanishing into the night. For some reason, her chest felt heavy. Why did that man feel so strangely familiar? The next day, Emily's shift ended early. She returned to her tiny apartment, one bedroom, peeling wallpaper, stacks of unpaid bills on the counter. Her mother's old photo sat by the window. "Mom," she whispered, touching the frame. "I wish you were here. You'd tell me everything's going to be okay." She opened the locket around her neck. Inside was a faded picture of her mother, holding a baby. The man in the corner of the photo was turned slightly away, his face barely visible. Her mother had always refused to talk about him. All Emily knew was that he had left before she was born. Meanwhile, miles away, Alexander sat in his penthouse office overlooking the city. His assistant, Robert, walked in. "Sir, about last night?" "Find out who she is," Alexander interrupted. "Who, sir?" "The waitress." "The one at the Grand Pearl," Robert blinked. "May I ask why?" Alexander's tone softened. "There's something about her." Robert nodded hesitantly. "Of course, sir." Hours later, he returned with a file. "Her name's Emily Carter, 24, lives in Brooklyn. Works double shifts at the Grand Pearl. Lost her mother 3 years ago. Father unknown." Alexander took the file slowly. "Father unknown?" he repeated under his breath. His fingers trembled slightly as he turned the page, and there it was, a photograph. Emily's staff photo. He stared at it for a long time, unable to look away. It was like looking at a ghost. He opened his drawer and pulled out an old envelope. Inside was a decades-old letter, yellowed at the edges, written in familiar handwriting. It was from Claire. "Alex, if you ever find this, I hope you've changed. Our daughter deserves better than your silence." The words hit him like a storm. He whispered to himself, almost in disbelief, "Emily." Across the city, Emily sat by the window, staring at the skyline she could never reach. Two lives, one built on power, one built on struggle, both bound by a secret that neither of them yet understood. But fate had already begun to weave its next move, because the man she served last night was not just another customer. He was the father she had never known, and soon both their worlds would collide, in ways neither could ever. Imagine, the night was restless. Rain whispered against the window of Emily's apartment as she stared at the city. Below, lights flickering like stars that belonged to someone else. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. She'd rather save the last packet of noodles for tomorrow. Meanwhile, miles away in a marble office high above Manhattan, Alexander Blackwood couldn't focus. The city stretched beneath him like a kingdom he'd built. But tonight, none of it mattered. He sat behind his desk, the photo of Emily lying before him. He had looked at it 100 times already, yet each time it shook him a little more. Robert entered quietly. "Sir, are you all right?" Alexander didn't answer right away. His voice, when it came, was distant. "She has her mother's eyes, sir." "Claire," Alexander said softly, "I thought time would erase the guilt, but it hasn't." Robert hesitated. "Should I?" Alexander raised a hand. "No, leave me. I just need a moment." When Robert left, Alexander opened the drawer again. Inside was that old letter, the one Claire had written before she passed away. He read it once more, the words cutting deeper each time. "If you ever find this, Alex, I want you to know she's beautiful. She has your stubbornness, But don't come back unless you're ready to be a father, not a businessman." He closed his eyes. "I wasn't ready then," he whispered. "But maybe I am now." The next morning, Emily arrived early at the restaurant, tying her hair back and setting up her section. Jenna waved from the counter. "You're early. Trying to impress the boss?" Emily smiled faintly. "Just couldn't sleep." But as she spoke, a tall man in a suit walked in. "Not a customer, an assistant." "Excuse me," he said, checking a paper. "Is Miss Emily Carter here?" Emily blinked. "That's me," the man smiled politely. "Mr. Alexander Blackwood would like to invite you for a private dinner this evening. He insists it's about a personal matter." The entire staff turned to look. Jenna's jaw dropped. "You got invited by the Alexander Blackwood?" Emily stammered. "There must be a mistake. Why would a billionaire want to have dinner with me?" The man simply handed her a small card. "The car will pick you up at 7. Please wear something formal." And before she could respond, he was gone. Emily stood frozen, the card trembling in her hand. Her mind raced. Had she done something wrong? Did she offend him? Why would someone like him even remember her? That evening, the city glittered under a soft drizzle. Emily stood in front of her cracked mirror, wearing her mother's old blue dress. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, simple, and carried the faint scent of home. She adjusted the silver locket at her neck and whispered, "Wish me luck, Mom." Outside, a sleek black car waited. The driver opened the door respectfully. As the car glided through the streets, Emily's heart pounded harder with every turn. When they finally arrived, she stared up at the towering Blackwood estate, a mansion that looked more like a palace. For a moment, she thought about turning back, but curiosity, and something deeper she couldn't name, kept her feet moving forward. Inside, the marble floors gleamed under chandeliers. Alexander was waiting at the end of the hall. Dressed in a tailored suit, his expression calm but unreadable. "Miss Carter," he greeted. "Thank you for coming," Emily swallowed. "I wasn't sure why you asked me here." Alexander gestured to the dining room. "Please sit. Have dinner with me. I owe you that much." The table stretched endlessly, filled with dishes she couldn't even name. Emily sat carefully, unsure where to start. He poured her a glass of water himself. Something no billionaire would ever do. It caught her off guard. "So," she said softly, trying to smile. "Did I, do something wrong at the restaurant?" Alexander almost smiled, quite the opposite. "You reminded me of someone." Emily looked down. "Your daughter?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Alexander froze. His breath caught, the air in the room suddenly heavier. "What do you know about her?" he asked carefully. Emily shook her head. "Nothing really. Just overheard someone at the bar saying she passed away." Alexander's voice softened. "She didn't die." "Not really," he paused, then added quietly. "She just grew up without me." Emily frowned, confused. "I don't understand." He studied her face again, every detail cutting through his composure. The same eyes, the same stubborn tilt of the chin, the same quiet fire that once lived in Claire. He leaned forward slightly. "Emily, may I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you know your father?" The question hit her like a knife. She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "No, Mom never talked about him." "Never?" Emily shook her head. "She said he left before I was born." I stopped asking after a while. Silence fell between them, thick, heavy, and filled with everything they weren't saying. Alexander's voice trembled almost imperceptibly. "What was your mother's name?" "Claire," Emily said quietly. "Claire Dawson." Alexander's fork fell from his hand, clattering against the plate. Emily flinched. "Are you all right?" He nodded quickly, but his world was spinning. Claire Dawson. There was no doubt now. His throat tightened. "Emily, I knew your mother." Emily frowned. "You did?" He nodded. "A long time ago, we were very close." Something strange flickered across her face. Surprise, confusion, maybe even hope. "What happened?" she asked softly. He looked down, his voice breaking slightly. "I made a mistake. I thought success was more important than family. And when I realized what I'd lost, it was too late." Emily looked at him, her eyes softening. "You sound like you regret it." "I do," he said quietly. "More than anything." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the rain tapping gently against the windows. Then, Emily reached for her locket. My mom always said people deserve second chances if they truly change. She opened it, showing him the tiny photo inside. This is the only picture I have of her and the man she loved. But I never knew who he was. Alexander leaned closer, his heart hammering. When his eyes met the faint image inside the locket, the world seemed to stop. The man in the photo was him, his breath caught. His eyes glistened. Emily noticed his expression change. "What's wrong?" she whispered. Alexander's voice cracked. "Emily, that's me." Her world tilted. "What?" He took a shaky breath. "I was there when that photo was taken. Your mother and I—" He stopped, his voice breaking. "Emily, I'm your father." For a long, unbearable moment, neither of them moved. Emily stared at him, eyes wide, face pale. "That's not possible." "My father abandoned us." Tears welled in Alexander's eyes. "I did, and it's my greatest sin." Emily stood, pushing the chair back. "You expect me to believe that after all these years?" "Please," he whispered. "I never knew where you were. Your mother kept you safe from my world. But when I saw you, I knew. I felt it." Her hands trembled. "You had all the power, all the money, and you left us to struggle." "I know," he said, voice breaking, "and I can't undo the past. But let me try to make things right." Emily's vision blurred with tears. "Right? You can't buy back a childhood. You can't buy back her." Alexander's chest tightened, his face etched with regret. "You're right. I can't, but I can be here now." Emily shook her head, stepping back. "I don't need your money. It's not money I want to give you," he said quietly. "It's the truth." For a long moment, she just stared at him, the man who was both a stranger and her father. The room seemed smaller, the air heavier, as the rain fell harder outside. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know if I can ever forgive you." "I don't deserve forgiveness," Alexander said, "but I'll wait, as long as it takes." Emily turned away, wiping her eyes. "I should go," he nodded slowly, voice trembling. "If you ever want to talk, my door will always be open." She didn't answer. She just walked out, into the rain, her mother's locket pressed tightly against her heart. Alexander stood alone in the silent mansion, tears streaming down his face, the man who had everything, yet lost what mattered most. And as lightning flashed outside, he whispered to himself, "I finally found her," only to lose her again. But fate wasn't finished with them yet, because what would happen next would test the meaning of forgiveness itself. The rain didn't stop that night. It followed Emily home like a shadow, whispering on her window, tapping gently against her roof, as if the sky itself couldn't stop crying for her. She sat on her bed, still in her mother's blue dress, staring at the locket resting in her palm, her father's face, the man from the photograph. The man she'd unknowingly served dinner to was no longer a mystery, and yet it felt like everything inside her had shattered. She replayed every moment, the way he looked at her, the way his voice trembled, the regret in his eyes. Could it really be true? Was the man she'd spent her whole life hating the same man who had quietly tried to reach out? The clock ticked past midnight. She hadn't eaten. She couldn't. The weight of truth was heavier than hunger. Across town, Alexander stood in his study, staring out the window. The city lights blurred through the rain, like tears refusing to fall. On the desk lay two things: the photo of Claire and Emily's locket, the one she had accidentally dropped when she left. He held it gently, brushing a thumb over the tiny frame. "Claire," he whispered, voice cracking. "I found her. She's everything you said she'd be." His chest ached as he remembered that final letter, her words that had haunted him for years. "If you ever find her, don't tell her with your mouth. Alex, tell her with your heart," he sighed, closing his eyes. "I failed once. I won't fail again." Days passed. Emily tried to return to her routine, but nothing felt normal anymore. Every clink of a glass, every face in the restaurant, it all blurred together. Her heart wasn't at work anymore. It was somewhere between anger and grief. "Hey," Jenna said one morning, nudging her. "You okay?" "You've been zoning out all week," Emily forced a weak smile. "Just tired," Jenna folded her arms. "Tired or heartbroken?" "Spill it, girl." Emily looked away. "It's complicated." Jenna leaned closer. "The billionaire thing, right? Everyone's talking about it." "Did he do something?" Emily hesitated, then whispered, "He said he's my father." Jenna's eyes widened. Wait, what? Yeah, Emily murmured. And I don't even know what to think anymore. Jenna sat back, stunned. So the guy who owns half the city is your dad? Emily nodded silently. Then what are you still doing here? Because money doesn't fix everything, Jenna. Her friend blinked. But doesn't it change things? Emily's voice broke. It changes everything. That's the problem. Later that night, the restaurant was nearly empty. Emily was wiping down tables when a small boy walked in with a woman. His mother, by the looks of it. They looked tired, hungry. Emily smiled softly. Can I get you something to eat? The woman hesitated. We don't have much. Emily waved it off. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. She brought them soup and bread, the warmest meal she could find. As the boy ate, she couldn't help but smile. For a moment, the weight on her chest felt lighter, but when she turned around, her heart skipped. Alexander was standing near the doorway, watching. He'd come quietly. No entourage, no arrogance, just a man in a simple coat, holding the locket she'd left behind. Their eyes met. Neither moved. Finally, he spoke softly. You left this. She looked at the locket, then at him. You didn't have to bring it. I did, he said quietly. It belongs to you. And to her? She hesitated, then took it from his hand. Thank you, she murmured, trying to sound distant, but her voice betrayed her. He nodded slowly, his gaze flicking to the boy eating happily. You're like her, he said softly. Your mother? Always helping strangers? Emily's jaw tightened. She didn't have much to give. But she gave anyway, Alexander's voice broke slightly. She gave me more than I deserved. They stood there for a long moment, the hum of the restaurant filling the silence. Then, quietly, he said, Emily, would you let me tell you the truth? She looked away. I already know the truth. Do you? He asked, his tone gentle but firm. Because I don't think you've heard my side yet, she sighed. Why should I? You left, yes, he said, but not because I wanted to. He took a deep breath, his voice trembling. Your mother and I loved each other, but the world I lived in, it wasn't kind. My family didn't approve of her. They threatened to destroy her, and I was too cowardly to fight them. So I left, thinking I was protecting her. Emily stared at him, her expression unreadable. Protecting her? By leaving her alone? I thought I could fix things, then come back, he said, his eyes glistening. But when I returned, she was gone. And by the time I found her again, he stopped, his voice breaking. She was already sick. She didn't tell me she had a daughter, not until that letter came years later. And when I saw you that night serving me dinner, I knew. Emily's heart twisted. Every word hurt more than the last. But deep inside, something fragile began to crack. The anger, the bitterness, the wall she'd built to survive. I don't know if I can forgive you, she whispered. He nodded. I wouldn't blame you if you couldn't. She turned away, blinking back tears. Why now? She asked quietly. Why come back after all this time? He hesitated. Because I didn't want to die a man who built empires but lost his family. The honesty in his voice pierced through her. She looked at him again, this time not as the billionaire, but as a broken father trying to piece together what was left. People change, he said softly. Sometimes too late, but change nonetheless. For the first time, Emily didn't walk away. She didn't forgive him. Not yet, but she didn't shut him out either. Maybe, she said quietly. Some things need more than an apology. He nodded. Then let me earn it. She hesitated, then sighed. We'll see. He smiled faintly, the first hint of warmth between them. As he turned to leave, he said gently, You remind me of your mother more every second I stand here. Emily looked down, hiding her tears. She'd probably tell you to stop making excuses, Alexander chuckled softly. She would. She always did. When he left, Emily stood still, the locket heavy in her palm, her heart heavier in her chest. The truth had finally come out, but it didn't bring peace. It brought something else, a question she didn't yet know how to answer. That night she dreamt of her mother, not the tired, coughing woman she'd watched fade away, but younger, smiling, spinning under the rain with laughter in her eyes. Her mother said softly, You can't heal what you refuse to touch. My love. Emily woke up in tears. The sun was rising, pale gold light cutting through her window. For the first time in years, she didn't feel entirely alone. She picked up her phone and stared at the number Alexander had left on the card. Her thumb hovered over it, heart pounding. Then she dialed. It rang once, twice. Then his voice came through, gentle, hopeful, trembling. "Emily?" She swallowed. "It's me." Silence. Then a breath. "Thank you for calling." "I'm not forgiving you," she said quickly. "Not yet. I understand, but maybe we can talk." His voice softened. "I'd like that. More than anything." And just like that, a door that had been closed for decades began to open, slowly, carefully, painfully. Because sometimes the hardest part isn't forgiving, it's allowing yourself to start again. But fate had another twist waiting, one that would test both of them in ways they never imagined. The world felt different the next morning. For the first time, Emily didn't wake up to dread. She woke up to possibility. Her phone buzzed softly. A message from an unknown number. Breakfast? 9 a.m., Blackwood Tower. She stared at it for a long time, heart pounding. Then she typed back 2 words. "I'll come." Blackwood Tower shimmered under the morning sun. It was the kind of place she used to walk past without daring to look inside. Now, she was walking through its glass doors, her reflection swallowed by marble and gold. Her receptionist smiled nervously. "Miss Carter, Mr. Blackwood is expecting you." Elevator doors closed around her, and as the numbers climbed, so did her anxiety. When the doors opened, she stepped into a world made of silence and wealth. The top floor, where even the air seemed expensive. Alexander stood by the window, hands in his pockets, watching the city stretch endlessly below. He turned when he heard her steps. For a moment, he didn't speak. He just smiled. Not the confident smile of a CEO, but the quiet relief of a father seeing his daughter again. "You came," he said softly. "I said I would." He nodded, gesturing to the table. "I wasn't sure what you liked, so I ordered a bit of everything." The table was covered with silver trays, fruit, pastries, coffee, things she'd never even tasted. She sat carefully, unsure how to exist in a place like this. He poured her coffee himself. "You used to hate mornings, just like your mother." Emily looked up sharply. "You remember that?" He smiled faintly. "She never stopped talking about you, even when she said she wouldn't." A small silence settled. Not cold this time, just heavy with memories neither of them knew how to share. Finally, Emily said, "You know, I still work at the diner. My rent's late again. The landlord's threatening to change the locks." Alexander's face tightened. "That won't happen again." "I'll make sure of it." She looked at him sharply. "I'm not here for money." "I know," he said gently. "But that doesn't mean you have to keep suffering to prove a point." She sighed. "That's not it. I need to stand on my own. If I let you fix everything, what am I?" He studied her for a long time. "You're my daughter, and that means you don't have to fight alone anymore." Days turned into weeks. They met more often, sometimes at the tower, sometimes at the quiet cafe near her apartment. Their conversations were awkward at first, then warmer. He told her stories of her mother, how she used to dance barefoot in the rain, how she dreamed of owning a tiny flower shop by the sea. Emily told him about the years he'd missed. Her first day of school, the nights her mother cried, the birthday dinners with a single candle and too many wishes. And slowly, piece by piece, something fragile began to form between them. Trust, not perfect, not whole, but real. One evening, Alexander invited her to a charity gala, his company's annual event. He wanted to introduce her to his world, the one she'd never seen. She hesitated. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" He smiled. "They should meet the reason I finally started living again." She wanted to refuse, but something in his eyes, the quiet pride, the hope, made her say yes. That night, Emily stood in front of the mirror, wearing the dress he'd sent, a soft ivory gown, elegant but simple, like it had been made for someone who didn't know she was beautiful yet. Her hair fell in gentle waves, and when she put on her mother's locket, it felt like a blessing. The car arrived. By the time she reached the Blackwood Hotel, Her heart was thundering. Reporters lined the entrance, flashes bursting like lightning as the city's elite arrived. When she stepped out, the crowd turned. Whispers followed her. Who is she? She's with him? That's the waitress, isn't it? Alexander was waiting at the top of the stairs. When he saw her, he froze. Pride and guilt mixing in his eyes, he offered his arm. You look just like your mother, she smiled softly. You've said that before, and I'll keep saying it, he said. Because it's true. Inside, chandeliers glittered, laughter filled the air, and the orchestra played songs she'd never heard. It was another world, dazzling. Cold and watching, he led her through the crowd. These are the people I used to think mattered most, he whispered. Now I see they were just faces, but not everyone looked kindly. A woman in pearls leaned toward another guest, whispering behind her fan. Is that her? The waitress he's been meeting? Emily felt the sting of their eyes, the quiet judgment Alexander noticed. Ignore them, he said under his breath. They don't know who you are, she looked up at him. Neither do I. Before he could answer, a voice cut through the room. Alexander Blackwood. We need to talk. It was Martin Hale, his business partner, sharp suit, colder smile. Now's not the time, Alexander said. Martin's eyes flicked toward Emily. You brought her here? She's my daughter, Martin laughed under his breath. You're what? You're joking. The words spread through the room like wildfire. Emily froze as heads turned. Murmurs filled the air. Alexander's jaw tightened. You heard me, Martin smirked. This is a mistake, Alex. The board won't like it. You've built an empire on image, and now you want to ruin it for some girl from a diner? Watch your mouth, Alexander warned, but Martin wasn't done. Do you have proof? Or are you just desperate for sympathy? Emily felt her chest tighten. Her hands shook. She wanted to disappear. Alexander stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. You can question me all you want, Martin, but you will not speak about her like that. The room fell silent. Every pair of eyes was on them, and in that silence, something in Emily shifted. The shame, the doubt, all of it. She lifted her chin. You don't have to defend me, she said quietly. I can speak for myself, Martin turned toward her, amused. Oh, and what exactly do you have to say? She looked him dead in the eye. That you're the reason people like him forget what really matters. That maybe if you stopped counting money long enough to remember what kindness feels like, you'd understand why he's better than you'll ever be. The room gasped. Martin's smirk vanished. Alexander's lips curved into the faintest smile. Pride, pure and unhidden. He stepped beside her, his hand steady on her shoulder. That's my daughter. Later, on the terrace, the city glittered beneath them. Emily leaned against the railing, the wind lifting her hair. He joined her quietly. You didn't have to do that, she said. He smiled. You did it for me. I didn't do it for you, she said softly. I did it because I finally understood. Understood what? That you're human. He looked at her, eyes glistening. That's not something I've heard in a long time. She turned to face him. All my life I blamed you for leaving. I thought you didn't care. But tonight, when they talked about you like that, I realized something. What's that? I might not forgive you yet, but I don't hate you anymore. He closed his eyes, exhaling shakily. That's more than I deserve, she smiled faintly. Maybe, but it's a start. They stood there in silence, the father who lost everything, and the daughter who never had enough, both trying to learn what love felt like when it wasn't perfect. Inside, the orchestra played a slow, familiar tune, a song her mother used to hum when she thought Emily was asleep. And for the first time, Emily didn't feel like the poor waitress anymore. She felt like someone finding her place in a story she didn't know she belonged to, but the night wasn't done testing them. Because just as she was about to speak, Alexander's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and the color drained from his face. Emily frowned. What is it? He hesitated, his voice low. The company. There's been an attack on our systems. Someone's trying to take everything, she blinked. Now, he nodded grimly. Tonight. And in that single moment, the warmth between them turned into a storm. Because whoever was behind it, whoever wanted to destroy Alexander Blackwood, was about to drag Emily into a battle far darker than either of them could imagine. The city had fallen silent. From the terrace, Emily watched Alexander pacing near the glass doors, his phone pressed to his ear. His voice was calm, too calm, the way people sound when everything they've built is slipping away. "Yes, I understand," he said tightly. "Shut it down. Transfer all data to the backup server. No, not through Martin's authorization. Through mine." He ended the call and exhaled, the tremor in his hands betraying the composure in his voice. "What's happening?" Emily asked quietly. He looked at her, torn between fear and guilt. "Someone breached our financial network. Millions. Gone in minutes." Her stomach dropped. "How is that even possible?" He hesitated, the truth forming heavy on his tongue. "It's possible if the person doing it knows exactly where to look." There was a pause, and then Emily understood. "Martin," she whispered. Alexander nodded grimly. "He's been planning this for months. I just didn't see it." Within the hour, they were in his car, racing through the sleeping city. The dashboard lights flickered across his face. Pale, drawn, determined, Emily sat beside him, her mind a whirlwind of fear and disbelief. Only hours ago, she'd been wearing a gown, walking through golden halls. Now she was clutching her mother's locket, praying it wasn't all about to shatter. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To the office," he said. "If Martin's behind this, he'll try to erase everything before morning." "Can't the police?" He shook his head. "By the time they act, it'll be too late. The company, the employees, the charities we fund, everything could vanish." Emily swallowed. "Then we stop him." Alexander glanced at her, surprise flickering behind the worry. "You don't have to come." She met his eyes. "You said I'm not fighting alone anymore. Remember?" He smiled faintly, a flash of pride cutting through the chaos. "You really are your mother's daughter." They reached Blackwood Tower just before dawn. The streets were empty, the city still caught between night and light. Inside, the lobby lights flickered dimly, the hum of computers echoing like distant thunder. Alexander swiped his card, but the elevator panel flashed red. "Access denied. Martin's locked me out," he muttered. Emily looked around, thinking fast. "There's another way." She led him toward the maintenance corridor. Years of working in diners had taught her how to find shortcuts, how to move unseen through a narrow staircase. They climbed in silence, up 40 floors of cold concrete and echoing steel, until they reached the top. The door creaked open to reveal the executive suite. Dark, except for the glow of monitors. And there he was, Martin Hale, standing before the main terminal, typing furiously. He didn't even flinch when he heard the door. "Alexander," he said without turning. "You're early. I thought you'd be at the gala pretending to be human." "Turn it off," Alexander said, his voice low. Martin smiled. "It's too late for that. You see, I built this company with you, but you forgot who made you rich, who covered your mistakes. So I decided to take what I'm owed." He turned, eyes gleaming with something cold. "And now you bring the waitress? Perfect. A family reunion at the end of your empire." Emily's heart pounded. "Why are you doing this?" Martin's expression didn't change. "Because your father built his fortune on sentiment. He gave when he should have taken, helped when he should have crushed. People like him don't belong at the top. They're too busy feeling." Alexander stepped forward. "You always wanted power, Martin. That's all this is. And you always wanted love," Martin sneered. "Tell me, Alex, how's that working out?" Emily's fists clenched. "You're not going to get away with this," Martin chuckled. "Sweetheart, I already have." But before he could finish his command, Emily noticed something, a flicker on the monitor, a countdown timer, buried behind his code. She stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "You didn't delete everything yet," she said softly. Martin turned sharply. "What?" she pointed. "Your override key, it's still running a trace loop. If you pull the plug now, it'll flag your IP address across the entire security network." Alexander blinked. "How do you know that?" She smiled faintly. "You think working double shifts doesn't teach you how to survive. I fixed more crashed systems at the diner than you'd believe." Martin's face twisted. "You're bluffing. Try me," she said. For the first time, Martin hesitated. His hands froze above the keyboard. Alexander saw his chance. He lunged forward, hitting the emergency switch. The monitors flashed white, code freezing midstream, then restoring. A loud click echoed. Security doors locked down automatically. Martin backed away, eyes wide. "You just trapped us." Alexander shook his head. "No, I just saved everything." He reached for the phone on the desk. Security? This is Alexander Blackwood. I need a lockdown on level 40, now. Martin turned toward Emily, rage burning in his eyes. You think you've won? He hissed. She stood her ground. No, I think we did. Moments later, guards stormed in. Martin was dragged away, shouting, the echo of his fury fading down the hall. The office fell quiet again. Alexander looked at his daughter, really looked, as if seeing her for the first time. You saved me, he said softly. Emily shook her head. No, I just helped you see who you really are. The sun broke through the skyline, painting the office gold. For the first time in years, Alexander Blackwood didn't feel like a man chained to his mistakes. He felt free. He turned toward the window. You know, when I left your mother, I told myself I was doing the right thing, that I couldn't give you the life you deserved. But I realize now what you needed wasn't money. It was me. Emily's eyes softened. Maybe it's not too late. He looked at her, the strength in her eyes, the kindness that reminded him of everything he'd lost. Do you really believe that? She smiled faintly. I do, because I finally got to know the man behind the name. And he's worth forgiving. He swallowed hard, his voice breaking. You have your mother's heart and your stubbornness, she said, smiling through tears. He laughed quietly, a sound that felt like a beginning. Months later, the diner was busier than ever, but things had changed. The same waitress who once hid behind counters now owned the place. The name above the door read, Lila's Table. Emily wiped down the counter. Humming softly to the tune her mother used to sing, outside, a black car pulled up. Alexander stepped out, holding a bouquet of daisies, her mother's favorite. He walked in, looking around proudly. You did all this? He asked. She nodded. With a little help. And a few sleepless nights, he smiled. Looks like the Blackwoods finally built something real. They sat together by the window, father and daughter, no titles, no wealth, just two people who had found their way back to each other through all the noise. Emily looked out at the street, her voice soft. You know, if you hadn't walked into that diner that day, we might never have met. Alexander chuckled. Maybe fate was tired of waiting for us, she smiled. Maybe. He raised his coffee cup. To second chances, she clinked hers gently against his. And to family, the kind that finds you when you least expect it. As the camera fades, the voice of the narrator echoes softly, sometimes life brings people back not because they deserve another chance, but because they're finally ready to see what truly matters. And when love replaces regret, even the poorest heart can feel richer than gold. Fade out. The diner bell rings one last time, and somewhere between the sound of laughter and the smell of coffee, a father and daughter begin again.